Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Kauffman Foundation for an exciting day on a very vital topic for sure. Not only as it has existed for the last several years, the crowdfunding specifically, but what the future holds for it once the SEC decides to give us some guidelines on doing that. I wanted to start, before I introduced our keynote luncheon speaker, I wanted to start by thanking the folks that taught the primer section of Demystifying Crowdfunding event in Kauffman Labs this morning. Jace, Jason, Claude, Nate, thank you so much. I heard already lots of positive comments on that, and please join me in a round of applause. It was, I got a chance to meet and speak with Slava a little earlier, and we were joking, as we sometimes do here in the Midwest, that yes, the internet actually reaches here, and it's nice to see that we actually have people, born and raised here that can take advantage of some of these great things that are happening in crowdfunding, and you don't, in fact, always have to import somebody from the coast to represent that. So thanks again. With that said, I'd like to introduce our luncheon keynote speaker. I've got the official intro or bio in that he's well-deserved to have me read, and I will, but I want to preempt that by just saying, I've had an hour or so with Slava earlier this morning, several of us did, and I can tell you there's a kindred spirit that is really part of what he stands for, what his co-founders stand for, and what Indiegogo is doing. A kindred spirit to the ethos of what we try to do here in this building, with the good fortune that we have to represent the intentions of our donor, Mr. Kauffman. This is all very much aligned with our overall mission and goals to help democratize entrepreneurship. And broadening the base of access to capital is one big way that we do that. And I'm going to say it now because he's going to get mobbed afterwards. Thank you, Slava, for making this trip and sharing your thoughts with us. That said, Slava is CEO and co-founder of Indiegogo, a company dedicated to revolutionizing the way people fund what matters to them. And he's led the organization to becoming the largest crowdfunding platform in the world. Slava is responsible for executing the company's strategic growth initiatives while overseeing all the daily operations. Prior to Indiegogo, like many successful entrepreneurs, he had very successful consulting background working on behalf of clients such as MasterCard and Federal Express, a couple companies that know a little thing or two about innovation, marketing, and the like. Slava is also the founder of Music Against Myeloma, an annual charity event that raises funds and awareness for cancer research. Slava graduated with a BSc from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. He currently travels back and forth between Indiegogo's San Francisco and New York headquarters, which makes my Cleveland to Kansas City commute look like a joke. But I will say, in my defense, he's a good decade or more younger than me, so that's a younger man's game. With that said, please join me in giving him a warm Kansas City welcome, Slava Rubin.
Thank you. All right, can you guys hear me? All right, perfect. So I know it says how to raise $1 million in 30 days, why entrepreneurs should care about Indiegogo, but let's get out of the way the most important thing. I've been to Kansas City before, so I've been to Jack Stack, I've been to Gates, I've been to Arthur Bryant's. I have not been to Oklahoma Joe's, so I'm going there today. So right now, I haven't been to LC's. The original is a little far away. So I'm a big Burnt Ends fan, and right now, and I love beef ribs, so I'm a Jack Stack fan in case anybody wants to throw up their opinion. Any Jack Stack fans in here? All right, okay, good. All right, so I know a little bit of Kansas City. I actually was here for a Kansas City Chiefs Miami Dolphins game, and I don't know if anybody was at that game. It was like 5-6 years ago, and the only reason you would remember that game, because I think it's like the coldest game in the history of Kansas City. It was a regular season game. Oh man, it was cold. Everybody was hanging out in the bathrooms. That's the only place that there was. This is the pre-renovation, right? So it was like pretty old school. All right, so we have like 35 minutes and no Q&A time or Q&A time. Do we want what? So I'm going to work towards leaving 5 minutes at the end here. So we'll talk for 30 minutes. I'm going to talk pretty fast in general. I'm going to try to slow down, but there's going to be so much content. And you could already just know that my email is slava@Indiegogo, so you don't need my card. I don't have cards. My Twitter is @GoGoSlava. When you say, oh my gosh, can you put that slide back up? It's all on the website, so just go to our blog. So I'm just like preempting all your rush and all that, because I'm going to go through this pretty fast. So yeah, we're just going to cover the background of Indiegogo quickly and what crowdfunding is all about, how we got here. That way we'll all be level set, and then we'll go through like a serious fire hose of information where you think you're just here for that and you think the front end is boring, but then I'll give you so much data your mind's going to blow. So we'll get there all by the top of the hour, I promise. All right, does that sound like an okay agenda? All right, we're not really going to talk about equity crowdfunding. That's like a whole nother topic. We're not going to talk about my entrepreneurial experience. We're more just going to talk about Indiegogo, what crowdfunding is, and then focus on case studies and what it matters to you. All right, so let's just dive right in. So crowdfunding, very simply, is crowdsourcing of funds. And what that means is accessing the crowds in little bits of something to make one big thing happen. So you can crowdsource words, or you can crowdsource movies, or you can crowdsource ideas or votes or whatever. We do crowdfunding, which is crowdsourcing of bits of money. So you get small bits of money from lots of people to get one big pile of money to make something happen. Okay, so crowdsourcing and crowdfunding are not equal. Crowdfunding is a flavor of crowdsourcing. I don't know how many of you know, but the Statue of Liberty was actually crowdfunded. This probably goes against some of your childhood learnings that it was free from the French. The actual statue was free, but the base cost nearly 300,000 US, and it was private investors that were able to fund the first half of that, and they had a gap of nearly $150,000. And this is the late 1800s, so it's really interesting that Joseph Pulitzer, who actually runs a newspaper called The New World at the time, uses his technology, which is the newspaper, to access his distribution network, which is the readers, to be able to solicit funds to make a thing happen, which is a representation of liberty, and he asks for money. The amazing thing is that he sends out updates 3 or 4 times, so he sends this through his newspaper 4 times, and we get the Statue of Liberty for anybody who's been to New York City, but is that the average contribution was 83 cents. So it's not as if there were some big funders that came in to save the day. There were like over 150,000 individuals that accessed this technology and then decided to provide the funds to the central place, which was to Joseph Pulitzer. I mean, I think that's pretty cool because I don't think crowdfunding is new at all. Like zero. If you want to go further back, you can go back to the Vatican, you can go back to all kinds of good stuff, right? Now, what is this thing on the right? Does anybody know what that thing on the right is? Google phone? Ubuntu Edge, nice, exactly. Which is, it is a phone, and it does run Android, but it actually also runs Ubuntu's software, which is an open source software. The reason this is cool is because there's a company called Canonical, which is a pretty successful, well, not pretty successful, the founder's like a 500 millionaire, successful company that they create open source software, and they said to themselves, why is it that in the car industry, most of us drive vanilla cars. We have Hondas and BMWs and vans and whatever, but if you want to drive like a super amazing, the most cutting edge, the sickest, most amazing car, you could. You go hang out in Formula One. Right, the most innovative, cutting-edge stuff. But in the phone industry, actually everybody uses vanilla. They have plain old iPhones and Androids and plain old, mass production, everything. What if we wanted the Formula One level phone? Like the sickest, most amazing, just in the moment phone. And that's exactly what Mark Shuttleworth thought. Why don't we try to get it funded? A one-time batch of 40,000 units at $800 a unit, which is $32 million. And if we fund it, we're going to have the sickest phone. If you check out the specs on Indiegogo, it's quite remarkable. It's made of one piece of steel. The glass cannot smudge or be able to get scratched except for with a diamond. It's able to run Android. I mean, everything is like 4 times better than your current phones, and at the same price, actually cheaper than an iPhone, because iPhones are $850 if you didn't have it through a package. And he puts it on Indiegogo, and they raised $13 million as of last week on Indiegogo, right? They didn't actually raise the full 32, and Mark Shuttleworth will tell you that's a massive success because it shows you the validation that was there. But you're talking about from Statue of Liberty to the Ubuntu Edge. It's actually the same thing, just different. It's just now you have internet and PayPal. I mean, it's all the same, right? You have Joseph Pulitzer, then you have Mark Shuttleworth, you have the newspaper, you have the internet, you have people carrying money or mailing money, you have PayPal and credit card. It's all the same, just different, right? So how do we get here in a little bit broader sense? Which is you start off with the Statue of Liberty, and then you get to the Securities Act of 1933, which is very relevant, actually. Because before that, I don't know how many of you were alive before that, probably not many, but you actually were able to solicit any investment that you wanted from anybody at any time, and it wasn't a big deal. So what would happen is you would have people from somewhere that would walk up to folks in Maryland. They would go door to door, and there were these grandmas, and it was like, Grandma, guess what? I got an investment for you. This is 1932. And they say, I got oil for you in Oklahoma, or in Kansas City, or in wherever, okay? So the grandma would be like, awesome, thanks, Johnny, for bringing me this opportunity. And they would give him the $500, and then Johnny will walk away, and then grandma would be like, how's my investment doing? But she'd never be able to find Johnny. And actually, Johnny never had an investment to put into Oklahoma oil. He actually just took the money and ran, which really sucked, because the last thing you want to do is have upset grandmas. Because then grandmas all yell at their local constituent, right, who's representing them, and be like, yo, this sucks. Grandmas don't use the word suck that much, but they get upset. So then as soon as you have all these grandmas upset at you, then they all combine in government, and they say, hey, I don't want all these grandmas upset at me because I'm not going to get reelected. They say, we need to do something about this because grandma can't be taken advantage of. Okay, let's create the SEC and the Securities Commission and all this stuff, which actually gets signed in 1933. So it's like a whole new world as of 1933. Now, the only way you can actually do equity investment is through a solicitation of offering through the SEC, which means you have to IPO and all this stuff, and there's other regulations. We don't need to go into all the details. But now the world changed. We now have accredited investors. You have to be rich enough to be smart enough to invest, to lose money, and all this stuff. We'll get back to this. And then you have banks that started to be established, like actual, not just like little small banks, but like this concept of like a corporation, a bank in scale, right, with branches. And then you have credit cards. Believe it or not, you used to have no credit cards. Can you imagine a world with no credit cards? Some of you are like, yeah, I wish I remember that word. No, like people like used to actually not have credit cards. It wasn't even a product offering, right? So now you have this whole new way of distributing money. And then you have NPR, which is, we go beyond the Statue of Liberty. You now have a really cool radio technology, right? You went from newspaper to now radio, solicitation of funds to have lots of people fund to make a bigger thing happen. So now you have PayPal, which is now, makes faster movement of money because now you don't have to wait like 4 days to get your check cleared or a week to have it sent in the mail. Then you have Friendster, which I know all of you were on, and it was totally fun. So that was like one of the origins of social networking. I mean, you have the Globe before that, but Friendster becomes a decent brand well before MySpace and well before Facebook. And we're at 2001 here. Now you have Obama. Obama's there because he's the first president to solicit over $1 million a day in sub-$1,000 contributions through a political campaign. Because a political campaign makes it more obvious because they always need to raise money, and they do it through technology, and they do it in small nuggets, just the way Joseph Pulitzer did, and just the way NPR did, and now Obama's doing it. The funny thing is Blue State Digital, the company that helped Obama, they actually came to us because we had already launched. And they said, oh, what's this Indiegogo thing all about? How does this work? So that was cool. Then you have Indiegogo launch, where actually we launched first, but we just needed to have Obama's story first. And then you have Square, which it makes it even easier to pay for things. You're a small business, you're an entrepreneur, you're like, I use technology, I don't need to like work in the big system. And then you have Obama again signing the Jobs Act, which is, look, it's President Roosevelt from before, and then you have, so it's a new thing signed. So the Jobs Act is like changing what happened. So this is 2012 from 1933, so that's like 80 years. So it only took like 80 years to change that. And it's still, being discussed, and it's not in implementation yet. So the world's like totally on its head. It's pretty exciting. If you look at it from a macro perspective, I think the 80s as the decade of desktop computing, the 90s of the decade of online commerce, 2000s as the decade of social, and this will go down as the decade of funding. Obviously, this is my opinion, but this is the decade of crowdfunding. This is the decade of banking of the unbanked, the social credit score. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, there's an article on CNN-FN which is talking about how people, or companies, not us, we do this, but not to the same level, companies are using social data all through Facebook and other things to decide whether or not to give you loans, right? And they're actually getting the repayment of those loans. So some people are here like, wow, I'm pretty good on Facebook, I'm gonna get a good loan. Yeah, exactly. This is exactly how they're deciding this. You're like, oh, what about my credit card repayments and my mortgage? Nope, none of that. They don't look at any of that. They're just looking totally at social data, right? So this is this decade. Right? If you look at 2013, where we are today, you're like, I'm not sure if I agree with you. I mean, you don't have to agree with me, it's my opinion. But in 2003, if you go back a decade, think about where you were in 2003 and how much you used MySpace, okay? Because I know none of you used Facebook yet, right? And how much of you used Friendster? Probably, I'm going to guess, not a lot of you, unless some of you were in the age range of between 10 and 20 in that year. And now, how many of you use Facebook today or anything like that? Point is, in 2003, if I was standing here telling you this is going to be the decade of social, you'd be like, you're a full-on moron, right? That's for kids who are skateboarders and punk bands. Well, it's the same thing, in my opinion, today with funding, which is by the end of this decade, people won't talk about crowdfunding because they don't talk about social networking anymore, right? They used to talk like 2008, what's your social networking strategy, all that stuff. Well, apparently social networking is gone, right? No, it's not. It's just layered into the fabric of communication. So people won't talk about crowdfunding by the end of this decade either. It'll be layered into the fabric of funding. It'll just be normal, just the way using credit cards is normal. People don't talk about it anymore. So that's how we got here. All right. Indiegogo, so we launched, we came up with the idea in 2006. We wanted to change the financial industry. We launched in January 2008. We now distribute millions of dollars across the world every week. That's our team, all those good-looking people with headbands. And so we distribute money in virtually every country of the world, and it's really exciting. So now more relevant to you. So this whole money thing, so that's what crowdfunding is all about. Well, actually, I would say that the money is the least valuable of the 5 main reasons. The least valuable, right? Because also it's a lot of work to do an Indiegogo campaign. So if you just want money, maybe you should just max out your credit card, right? But the main reasons are, number one, is market validation. And we'll go into this in a second. But a really good example, and we'll go through case studies, but a very timely example that just happened, is we had this interesting company that is creating a hardware device to be able to read your brain waves, to be able to then make decisions for you based on how your brain waves are making decisions. It's really cool. And so they went to the Valley to try to raise money, and they raised a little bit of money, but not as much as they wanted. So they went on Indiegogo, and they were able to have a campaign. They raised like nearly $300,000. And then just several months later, they raised a $6 million round. And it was all because of the campaign that they were able to then raise the $6 million. See, most of these entities, the government, the banks, the VCs, everybody, they're not in the risk business. They're in the risk mitigation business, right? So Indiegogo is risk mitigation because it's just proof. There's nothing to discuss. It's just there. It's data that's proving risk mitigation. Testing your marketing, instead of being very expensive with rolling out all of this collateral and videos and printing out stuff and going to the conference, being like, here's my marketing, I hope this works, you can just test it for virtually free. On Indiegogo, it's very nimble and easy because it's at a much lower price point, so that really helps you as you try to scale it out in the future. You get extra promotion, so Indiegogo helps amplify your reach so you can raise more money than you ever could on your own. And then capture data. I think this is actually the most important one, which is we shift things from being a transaction to a relationship. It's the old way of thinking is to think about transactions, is to try to sell one more item and not know who that person is. because then you have to go find that person again a year from now or a week from now, and that sucks. Why do you have to go find them again? You should just know them, and they should be your relationship. But in every industry, which is D2C, direct to consumer, there's always all these middlemen players, right? So whether it's the film industry through studios and music, it's labels, and fashion, it's the labels as well, and then whatever entity, it doesn't really matter. There's always people that take cuts and then take information, which means the connection from you to the end consumer is none, which just makes you rely on all those then middle players, which is kind of garbage. There's really no reason for that, because now all of that is collapsed, so you can just have the relationship, so what's the point of all of them? And you can figure out how they can add value, but if you own the relationship, it's completely different. So people, see, if you're in the transaction business, you're then in the cheapest cost business, because you have to right away have, pressure of commoditization, and then Walmart wins, right? Because then it's just highest volume, most scale of vanilla thing. If you're in the relationship business, it's called brand. See, relationship is just you pay extra, right, for a relationship. Some of you are Apple junkies. It's not because the commodity is so different, it's because you like that relationship. So if you do that at a micro level, all of you will have a relationship that you can then manage the pricing how you want to, because it's a relationship with your customers. How are we doing so far? All right, we're going to get into this. Here we go. So here are some case studies. So this is a hilarious one. It's hilarious because if I had an offering for you, which is, would you be willing to fund or invest a cafe that has cats in it, because we feel that not enough people have cats at home and they want to play around with cats on their spare time, would you fund that? Based on your laughter, I am assuming you think that is a crazy idea. Crazy enough that they try to raise 108,000 pounds and they raised 109,000 pounds and they've already opened up and they have tons of articles written about them and this totally exists. The guy over there is like, no way. It is so true. So that's market validation. The funny thing is they wouldn't have to spend any money on rent, they wouldn't have to spend any money on promotion, they wouldn't have to spend any money on investment if they didn't get funded, right? And they already had built-in customers. Or the next one is testing your marketing. So Canary is this really cool security system. And the reason I'm showing all these campaigns is a lot of them are higher funded campaigns. We also have tons of Kansas City examples. Has anybody been funded here? Anybody with a campaign that got funded? Oh yeah, awesome, great. So these guys tested their marketing with different visuals and stuff, and they were able to try to raise 100, and they raised nearly $2 million. I think it's still open, actually. If anybody needs a home security system, that's super innovative. And then you have the robotic dragonfly, which is one of my favorites. This is like so awesome, but they had no business, they had no company, they had no nothing. They're really just research students out of Georgia Tech. And they were trying to make, I mean, if you think about it, this is personal drones. I can show you the video, it's on the site. It's amazing. Like this is real, this is like an animation, like a visual. But like dragonflies, you know the size of a dragonfly? They've created robotic dragonflies that you can do audio and video, right? Like I could right now, not sure who's outside, I could fly my robotic dragonfly outside and have it go check what parking spots are available. Or maybe I should just fly it to Oklahoma Joe's and see how the line looks, right? Right? I mean, I don't know if the distance will work yet for these guys, but that's exactly what it is. Just two students, and then they wanted to raise $110,000 to try to do a production run, because if they didn't raise 110, it wouldn't be worth it to try to finance a production run, and they raised over $1 million. It's not because they were business people, it's because they got the exposure through Indiegogo. We got them on the front page of Yahoo and all kinds of good stuff. Scanadu, I don't know if we have any Star Trek fans here. Star Trek, anybody? So in Star Trek, there's a character named Bones, and Bones is like the doctor, and Bones would be like, yo, Captain Kirk, you're like maybe not healthy. You're like, oh, Bones, I'm not sure. So like Bones would whip out this object and be like, let me check if you're healthy. You look healthy to me, right? I mean, that's like science fiction. This is reality. Like people are bringing this to life. That object right there fits inside your pockets. Like if you're bulging pocket, women might not like it. But like, so you just can scan the person, and it has like all these medical research that's being done right there. And it's like, oh yeah, you're like, you know, blood pressure is this, your ECG is this, electrocardiogram crazy, like things that cost like tens of thousands of dollars is this, your like skin temperature is this, reality. So the thing is they're like capturing data, right? Because this actually is helping them for FDA stuff and also turning them into a relationship. And And then also money. I love this one. So the Tesla Museum. So Nikola Tesla had his original laboratory in Long Island, and they were going to actually sell that location to become a commercial property. And there was talk of it becoming like a Dunkin' Donuts or something. And there was some locals, which is actually quite crazy. No one turned it into a heritage site or anything like this. And some locals felt really bad about that because they grew up knowing like the legend of this is like where Nikola Tesla was and found electricity and all this stuff, and he did all these workshops. So they needed to raise $1.7 million to be able to buy the property in Long Island, which is pretty pricey. And they went to their local government in New York State, and they said, oh, I think that this should be government funded. You guys should just buy this and turn it into a heritage site and all that good stuff. And they said, we can't, it's not within the whatever. And I don't know how, but the people who really cared about this started their own nonprofit, and they got the government to say, you know what? We actually care enough about this because we really do feel like this is a part of New York, that state, that if you're able to find half the money, we'll find the other half of the money. So they put out, this is like one of the first examples, if not the first example, of public-private partnership through crowdfunding. If you think about it, this is the future, right? Because eventually you'll just be able to do market validation on those potholes, right? Get 20 people to fund, right? Everything will just like transition to government with market validation. So they just proved to them that people wanted this. So they raised 850,000. They actually raised 1.3, and then they got the other 850,000, and now they're buying the property and they're going to turn it into an amazing museum, which is really cool because Nikola Tesla, for any geeks in here, know like that versus Edison. Anyway. All right, so the 4 Ps of why people fund, because people will say like, I don't get it, like do I get profit or whatever. There's 4 reasons why anybody funds. Number 1 is because they care about the person, the cause, or the idea. We call that passion. Number 2 is for perks. Often that's a donation, the first one. Considered a donation. But really the word donation means it's tax deductible by the IRS, and the word invest means it's a financial instrument according to the SEC, so we just use the word fund or contribute, thanks. Perks is a product or service or experience, so most of you paid for your t-shirts or shirts, so that's just a financial transaction to get something in return. That happens a lot on Indiegogo. Participation, so kind of like the Statue of Liberty, and then 4 is profit, so you want to give $1 and get $5 back. A lot of you have investments, so you know what that means, but none of that's legal because of the because of the 1933 Act. But that is going to change because of the Jobs Act. People will want to ask questions, but that's going to happen over the next coming years, and it's just going to go into implementation at the end of this year and into next year and the coming decade and more. So exciting stuff. I didn't put profit. It's actually says pride. Sorry, mistake. Now 10 minutes of non-stop data. Here we go. All right, you thought I talked fast already. Wait till you see. No. So the only 3 things that matter. So now we're going to talk about how to raise $1 million in 30 days. Okay. So the only things that matter to have a good campaign is 3 things. Number 1, have a good pitch. Number 2, be proactive. And number 3, find an audience that cares. Now, please appreciate that everything I'm about to tell you has no opinion involved. We have the most data, the most campaigns of any platform in the world. We're in the most countries. We have most information. Everything I'm about to tell you is all data sourced. Okay? This used to be opinions back in the day, and I would hope that it was right, and some of the things were right, some of the things were wrong, but now it's all just data because we mine this data. Now, if you feel like this is a lot of good information that I'm about to tell you, some of it I'm going to show you, you can just go on our website because we actually have an insights section in our blog. So we have case studies on the blog, we have events on our blog, we also have a section with just insights, which is constant mining of data. And yeah. So for number 1, have a good pitch. For example, we know if you have a video as part of your campaign, you'll raise 114% more money than if you do not have a video as part of your campaign. Optimal videos that raise the most money will be between 2 to 3 minutes. The best way to chunk up your video, let's say it was 3 minutes, is in 3 modules. Module number 1, 15 to 30 seconds with the people from the campaign in the video saying, hi, Indiegogo, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z because I'm passionate and I have cool perks. Module number 2 is about 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes long, which is a reusable marketing / engagement / sales device, which explains in an engaging way what you're doing, but can be reused at other sites for your own website or social media or however you want to use it, because it's not fixed to the campaign. Module 3 is people coming back saying, thanks for listening this far in, and if you can fund now, thank you. Otherwise, please share. I really appreciate you spending time here on Indiegogo. The first and third modules are very specific to Indiegogo and should be made for Indiegogo. Otherwise, you'll be losing benefit. The second module in between, you can reuse in the future. Campaigns, on average, will hit their target on day 36 of a 47-day long campaign. Campaigns that hit their targets will have between 3 to 8 perks. Often you do not want to have less than 3 or more than 8. You could do whatever you want on Indiegogo, but 3 to 8 is the sweet spot. The average contribution is $74 on Indiegogo. The median contribution is $30 on Indiegogo, which means that's the one, the mode, the one that happens the most is $30. There's also a sweet spot at 25, so 25 and 30, it happens a lot. You want to have a low, medium, and large. Low is $25 or below, medium is 26 to 100, high is 100 to 500. You don't want to have choices within those buckets. You want to have 1, 1, and 1. If you give people choices, what happens is they then need to decide between two similar choices. If they need to decide, they need to think. If they need to think, they will wait. You just want them to act. Okay? You also want to have a very exciting perk, which often works as well, which is a perk is over $1,000, maybe over $5,000, over $10,000. If that sounds ridiculous to you, then that is exactly achieving its purpose. It should be something that's fun and interesting and ridiculous, because then you have two things that will happen. Number one, the press will write about it because they like to find ridiculous perks to talk about just for the sake of talking about it, which means your campaign will get pulled in. Or just because that is actually there, somebody will fund it. So we get 4- and 5-digit fundings happening on Indiegogo dozens, hundreds of times every day. 4 and 5 digits, meaning $10,000 swipe, right? All the time. People are like, that is bananas, right? The only reason it happens is because somebody listed $10,000. How often does somebody put in $10,000 on a campaign that has the highest perk that says $52? Never. Okay? Because just because it's there, they do it. Okay, so put one there. Next, you want to have your copy. You can't sell and you can't beg. You can do whatever you want, but neither of those work. You can only engage. So you want your copy to always start out with the individual story, not the sales of the product, because people fund people, then they fund what they care about. So first they care about the people. You want your copy to mimic that. Copy is the words, mimic the video. And you want to have images to break up the copy. If you have images as part of your copy, you also raise something like 80% more money than if you don't have images as part of your copy. Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. So in terms of being proactive, if you do an update every 5 days or less, you'll raise 4 times more money than if you do an update every 20 days or more. That, I think, is probably one of the most powerful ones. We know that email is your #1 tool, Facebook's #2, Twitter is #3 in terms of conversion as well as dollar amount given per channel. We know that if you get off to a fast start and you raise 25% of your money within your first week, you're 5 times more likely to hit your target. If I were you, I would just listen to me. This is just background noise for now. It just looks good. It's all here. So you could always find this on the internet, on our blog. And then what other ones in terms of being proactive? Oh, host committee. So as part of being proactive, you want to create your host committee. So your host committee, like in charity events, there's often like, oh, come to our charity event. This is the people on the host committee. The only reason charity events have host committee is because then people will have more reach, right? So what you want to do is you want to create a host committee as part of your campaign. You want to start this 6 to 8 weeks before your campaign where you have people commit to be part of your host committee. Then they'll reach out as part of being committed to get 10 to 20 other people to fund your campaign. So this way you have 50 to 100 people as part of your host committee, or use whatever number you want, and then each one of them has 10 to 20 people. So let's say it was 10 and you had 100 people, you're now up to 1,100 people. That was pretty fast, right? Because you had to get 100 people. Now getting 100 people is hard, but you have to figure that out, which then comes back to the #1 thing to know about funding an Indiegogo campaign: will you be successful? If you don't know who's funding you on day 1, don't launch. Okay, let's just think about what that means. It's a really simple phrase, but it has all the power in it. If you don't know who's funding you on day one, don't launch. Now, if you want to get really, really, really specific around that exercise, pull out a piece of paper, write down the person's name of how much you expect them to fund, who's expecting to fund, and how much you expect them to fund. Now, if that feels like weird or awkward, or it's like, how would I know? Clearly, you haven't done the diligence to do well at your campaign. But you're like, wait, if I was able to write down that it's Jenny will give $50, it means I have to have spoken to Jenny to have confirmed with her before the campaign launches that she would actually give $50. Okay, now we're getting somewhere here, right? Because if what you expect is you launch your campaign and money just comes out of nowhere, then you're going to end up us really amplifying what you've done, which we do great at multiplying anything that you do. So we multiply 0 gets right. So so the host committee. And then the last thing is finding a audience that cares. In general, so the average campaign on Indiegogo will get 20 to 25% of its funding from total strangers, people that are driven through the Indiegogo platform, through some channel and through the exposure. Some campaigns never get $1 from a stranger, and some campaigns will get 99% of their funding from total strangers. So how do you, and you typically need about 25 to 35% of your funding target to come from your inner circle first. So the smaller your target, the smaller the inner circle requirement you have. Now this might sound interesting or weird, but think about just walk away from Indiegogo for a second, think about life. Who wants to ever be the sucker on that new thing that you don't know who those people are? So you always rely on some social proof that somebody else says, oh yeah, he's legit, that product really works, whatever. And the origin of that coming from is people that are really close to the originator of that thing because their mom started to say, yeah, he's legit, it's my son, right? So like, that's where it all comes from originally. And that's like your fans, your family, your customers, people in your network. So it all has to start from there, and then you can start reaching out. The way you get more exposure on Indiegogo is you don't have to know me. Like I told you my email, it's slava@indiegogo, @gogoslava. It's useless. It's all like Google. Imagine trying to email Larry Page to be on the front page of Google. It's all data-driven, right? So that's the way Indiegogo works. There's no human curation, there's no manual touch, there's no judgment, there's no application. You can start your campaign right now. It's all data. All data. I mean, we're trying to literally change the world, which is if you apply a gatekeeper on new technology, you just create a new bank, right? You just create a new VC, you just create a new government, whatever. What disruption is that? We're trying to do something very hard, which is have no human intervention into deciding what gets to be funded except for the people decide, right? So that's how it works. So if there were 5 things that you should do as part of your homework right away, if you're launching your campaign, you should think about what is your video plan, what is your perk strategy, what is your update strategy, right? Remember, update every 5 days or less. What is your press strategy, and then what is your host committee? You get those things all pulled together. You get in touch with us if you want. We'll review your campaign. We don't have to review. It's just a service we'll provide if you want. You can launch it in the next 4 seconds if you want. That's it. Was that enough data? All right. So yeah, chances are you'll get funded in multiple countries. You know, we distribute money in 70 to 100 countries a week. Average campaign will get like 11 countries to fund its campaign. It's pretty wild. And yeah, we have all these resources on our website, including the Campaigners Field Guide, which really breaks down like a 8-page tutorial of like how to think about your campaign. We have our Indiegogo blog, we have our Insights blog, and you can always email our happiness team, which has a guaranteed 24 response time. So if they don't respond to you within 24 hours, you should definitely email me. So yeah, that's supported Indiegogo, so they're the happiness team. And that's it. And that's me in Kansas City, eating barbecue. I guess we have 5 minutes. Oh, yeah, so I mean, Indiegogo was originated, came up with the idea in 2006, and we actually wanted to go equity right away. And It's only because we were so naive and had no idea that we started hitting against all these legal and compliance roadblocks. They were like, ooh, this doesn't seem so easy to do. The short answer is Indiegogo right now, with perks and donations and all that, is doing quite well. And we think it's a massive, massive market opportunity just by itself. Like many billions of dollars market. And I mean, we're super pro equity crowdfunding, and we've been talking with the SEC and the folks in DC. We're there regularly, and we're totally leaning forward, but we want to see how the decisions play out, and we're definitely involved.
Okay, so you asked if we were done with data. I have a data question.
Right.
So this first question is kind of meaningless, but I'm going to say it anyway. What percentage of all campaigns are funded, and then what percentage of campaigns that follow all your rules get fully or substantially funded?
Yeah, so I mean, we're an open platform, so we just have tons and tons of campaigns. I'll answer your question kind of how you asked the second question, which is if you follow our advice, nearly all the time do they get funded. Yeah. Now, the challenge there is you have to have a lot of reality checks with yourself if you follow what our rules are, right? Which is how much do you need versus how much do you want? You know, you have a network of 4 people, you're asking for 47 million. I don't really see this happening, you know? So that said, no one has to follow our rules, and no one has to ask me or have me judge their application, right? So they just get to launch. So there's a lot of campaigns that are silly that, you know, they launch and they're like, oh, I have no funding, and then they send us emails that they're really upset that they're not on the homepage yet. I'm like, we can track all of your promotion activity. You've shared once, and you funded your own campaign for $1. You have a $27,000 goal. I'm not really sure why you deserve to be on the homepage yet.
I want to thank Slava for joining us today. You know, we have to wrap it up, unfortunately, for time. We have to get him out to a barbecue place. I'm going to say, with that stylish beard of yours, you'll be enjoying the barbecue for another week. I can see why you were shaved here for this photo and this excursion. If I could ask everybody once again, please thank Slava Rubin for joining us today.